Greetings, friends, and welcome back to the Musings from the Mount podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Carenza. Today, we're tackling what might be the most supreme of all topics, and that is love. Not the greeting card version, but something far more radical and practical. We do this by bringing together two seemingly different approaches, the systematic teachings of DK and the experiential poetry of Rumi. And we do this to explore love as a universal force that quite literally holds everything together. And it's like that Japanese art of kintsugi, where gold binds together broken pottery. Love is that gold. It's healing and connecting all the fragments of existence. We hope you enjoyed the episode. And if you do enjoy this podcast, please consider going to meditationmount.org and donating. Your donation helps us to bring you this podcast, as well as all the other programs that Mount produces, both today and in the future. We're incredibly grateful and honored by your support. Now back to the podcast and love. In contemplating this episode, which is the general, small topic of love, I was trying to think of a visual kind of imagery to begin with of what it means, because, for me, the way that we were going to frame this is looking at the poet Rumi and then the teachings of DK. And I was trying to find some kind of way to bridge these. And I was thinking of like the Japanese art of kintsugi, where they bind pottery together. And to me, that's an image of like that love is what can hold these things together. It's like it can hold a space and a container together, and it can heal.
Well, love is that gold.
Yeah.
Love is the gold that heals everything, because love is the universal glue. It's the original substance.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joey. That's a beautiful image.
Yeah. And I was just thinking, because we were kind of discussed some things, especially in the last episode, about the East and West, and these are two very different approaches. DK is more of systematic, and Rumi is more of experiential. And then you realize, like, in the same way that the Greeks have all the different words for love, but they're talking about the same thing.
Right, whether we're talking about eros or whether we're talking about agape or whatever we're talking about, it's different levels or frequencies of love. And we're going to discover that because the Tibetan master DK, who's part of the lineage that runs through Meditation Mount, he has some explanation of that. But I know you and I were thinking that this isn't just, let's read some things and have people ponder on it. We're inviting ourselves, and we're inviting all of you who are listening to this podcast to listen with the ears of the heart. That's an invitation from the Agni Yoga teaching. Listen with the ears of the heart, because the heart is sensitive to all vibration. It doesn't judge. It doesn't criticize. It discerns, and it knows when the truth is being spoken. And when the note of love is sounded, the heart resonates. It's like a chiming of a bell or the singing of a bird. It really is the underlying note of all creation, love. And therefore, when we listen with the ears of the heart, it's not just background noise.
Yeah.
It's the impulse that gave birth to all life. That's what we're uncovering. And in one respect, it's not fair to try and do a podcast using words to describe love, but we're going to do it anyway because...
we're going to give it a shot.
We're going to give it a shot.
Yeah.
So where would you like to start, Joey?
I think can we just start with, maybe for the skeptics out there, love is an emotional, experiential thing too, but this is not just a fluffy ideal. This is like it's a radical and practical force.
We're not talking about the sentimentality of a human experience of one of the frequency bands of love. We're talking about love that the mystics throughout the ages and the occultists and everyone has said is the heart of everything. You read these reports of mystics and hermits who live in the hills, and suddenly they get it. They have an awakening. They classic thing. You take your clothes off, run through the local village and shout love. And everyone thinks they've lost it. No, they've gained it.
It's almost like we're looking for a kind of this is very popular going on, the rewilding of things.
Yes.
The concept of letting lands go back to the wild, or we're sort of rewilding our concept of love.
Well, by wilding doesn't mean going back to a primitive. It means going back to its natural state.
Exactly.
It hasn't been conditioned by
Mm-hmm.
some of the thought forms that we have about each other and society. So it doesn't go through the old filters.
Yeah.
So how can we experience love as love is?
Right. Not the Hallmark version. This is, or even the Summer of Love version. This is something much more, universal. I mean, it's a universal language.
It's a universal language, and because it is the substance of all creation, it's the note that binds us together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So love is that which we have in common.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to start by just looking at some of the
let's do that.
Explanation that DK, and for those of you listening, we are taking from a book which is a compilation of the teachings of the Master DK called Ponder on This. So it's taking the Alice Bailey writings and sort of arranging them, ordering them in under topic. And so I've turned to a page that simply says love. and now we're going to go through this. Once again, let's allow it to register and listen with the ears of the heart, because this is deep stuff, and it's not trivial, this. And love is the quest I believe we're all on.
Mm-hmm.
And when we don't get love and we're out in the cold and we're isolated, we feel it. And sometimes it gets very cold and lonely when there isn't love, when I'm not able to either receive or give love. Because as we said before, when receiving and giving occur in the same moment, you have flow. So love is not flowing through us or from us. So this is what DK says. And you'll notice that as we read what he wrote, it will be using language from about 60, 70 years ago. So it'll have he's rather than he or she. And we'll do our best to change wherever possible. But just for the sake of flow and continuity, we're going to read the original text. But please bear in mind that it needs to be updated. When love for all beings, irrespective of who they may be, is beginning to be a realized fact in the heart of the disciple, and yet nevertheless love for himself exists not, then comes the indication that he is nearing the portal of initiation and may make the necessary preliminary pledges. So it's talking about, if you're going to, we did this whole series, 5-part series on initiation.
Yeah.
So in order to really knock on the door and begin your journey, you've got to open your heart. So it says, if he cares not for the suffering and pain of the lower self, if it is immaterial to him whether happiness comes his way or not, if the sole purpose of life is to serve and save the world, and if his brother's or sister's need is for him of greater moment than his own, then is the fire of love radiating his being, and the world can warm itself at his feet. It's sort of ancient prosaic language, but it doesn't mean you don't care for yourself, you don't have love for self, but it's not self-centered love. It's not a narcissistic love.
Yeah.
It simply means that we realize that we're here to be of loving service to the life around us.
Yeah.
And that's when you put your feet on the path, because the path of initiation is the path of service. And service is simply how we grow into a greater capacity to participate in life. It isn't, as we said before, a merit badge and then suddenly you're better than somebody else.
Yeah.
You've just got a greater capacity to be more useful, basically.
Yeah. You're like become like a transformer.
Yeah. So he says, this love has to be practical, tested manifestation and not just a theory. or simply an impractical ideal and a pleasing sentiment. So this was taken from the first book that he wrote back in, I think, in 1919, and Initiation, Human and Solar. This was he met up with Alice Bailey. He, at the time, the Master DK, was the head of a lamasery just over the Tibetan border from Nepal. And he had the ability to transmit thoughts to Alice Bailey. Alice Bailey had the ability to take them down like dictation at a distance. So this is not channeled writing. This is sort of inner facts, early inner facts going on.
Mm-hmm. It is interesting, though, that right off the bat, you see the very big difference between his approach and Rumi's approach.
Yes.
But I see it as like a yin-yang situation where it's part of the same whole. You know?
Well, why don't we just throw one Rumi in just for contrast? So here it is, Rumi. Love is the bridge between you and everything.
Yeah.
Well, that just basically sums everything up.
Yeah, as Rumi is so apt to doing.
Yes. So we're exploring the esoteric wisdom because it contains so much truth, and yet sometimes it's packaged in a way that is inaccessible.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to unpack it and see and reveal it in the light of today.
Yeah.
So this is what he says, and this one is taken from a treatise on cosmic fire, which is a very thick and sort of dense book to get through, but a treatise could be written on the subject of love and yet leave it unexhausted. Much light comes if we can ponder deeply on the three expressions of love. Love in the personality, love in the ego, and ego with a capital E is really the higher self, and love in the monad. The monad is that fiery atom that is the central core of being. So love in the personality gradually develops through the stages of love of self, pure and simple and entirely selfish, to love of family and friends, and then to love of men and women, until it arrives at the stage of love of humanity or group love consciousness, which is the predominant characteristic of the ego, the higher self. So here you see the transition. So you start off by being self-centered because you are the self, and the whole idea is to expand. So you start from a center, that center is you, and then you realize that it's one of these many centers of the one.
Mm.
And then as you grow, you have greater love for family, for friends, for community, and then love of humanity, because your capacity to hold, embrace, and impart love grows as you move along the path. So basically, he's saying there comes a point when you actually feel a love for the whole of humanity, unconditional love for humanity, then you shift over to love as it's characterized by the higher self. So it says, a master of compassion loves, suffers with, and remains with his kind and with his kin. Love in the ego, the higher self, gradually develops from love of humanity into universal love, a love that expresses not only the love of humanity, but also love of the deva, angelic evolutions, in their totality and of all forms of divine manifestation. So you realize love isn't just between people. Love is that which, between me and everything, as Rumi says. And the angelic or Davic life streams are our sisters and brothers. It's a parallel development. And it's said that at one point we will merge, the devas and the humans, and the form that we will take. Our bodies will be made of more refined substance, angelic substance. And this is where the whole image of the divine hermaphrodite comes in. Mm. That's what we're going towards. Right. The perfect blend of everything to express the perfect substance, which is love.
Right. Yeah, it's that can be very confusing, I think, to some people. And that's some very high level esoteric thought and philosophy. But I think of it going back to the kintsugi, like you have all these pieces that have fragmented, and what we're doing is reassembling them. So of course, if you reassemble it into one, it's going to have all the aspects of the both.
Well, that is the story of creation, as we've named it before. The one, in order to know itself, broke itself up and scattered itself through time and space and substance as the many. The many woke up as individual aspects of the one, but didn't know they were part of a greater one. And therefore, they began their journey of self-discovery. And then they realized they were more than just themselves. And then the I became the we. And then realizing that, you go back to a realization of, I'm an aspect of the one. And the one is going through an experience of self-realization. I mean, the really big cosmic self-realization through the agency of my life and your life and our lives. So when the many find their way back home to the one now is a self-realized one. It's different from the one that sent out the many. The one that sent out the many didn't know itself firsthand. But so we are like these agents of the one life that allow it to experience love and living in the most dense fields of its manifestation. It's an incredible mystery, Joey. It really is.
Yeah.
Wow. So, well, we're going to keep going here. In one respect, I'm hesitant to keep using all these words. I'd rather just read Rumi and have us reflect on it. But I think it's good to just lay out.
Well, I think it's good to see because, if you, using that analogy of the yin yang again, I mean, if you just have one without the other, then it's just it's only half the equation.
So let's pick it up where we left off. He says, this is about including the deva or the angelic evolutions and all forms of life in our love, not just humans. Love in the personality is love in the three worlds. That's the physical, the emotional, and mental. It's the encapsulation of our human experience. It doesn't go beyond that. Love in the ego or the higher self is love in the solar system. Because that's our true home. That's our family.
Yeah.
And all that it contains. Not just because it's all lives that comprise the solar being. Remember, the solar logos or the solar being is an entity. Inside that entity are all the planetary lives, and inside each planetary are all these sub-lives inside this multidimensional system. And the whole thing is held together and glued together and growing together through love. So, I know some people put Miracle Grow on their plants, try to help it. Just to let you know, the true Miracle Grow is love, in case you were wondering. And you don't need to go to the store to buy it. We have a if you like, an inexhaustible supply inside the heart.
I mean, I think that's one of the few things in the world that does not deplete by giving it away. It's a multiplier.
A friend of mine, a musician from Australia, just wrote one of the lines that it basically, you can't run out of love. That was the refrain. You can't run out of love.
Yeah. Yeah. It's as close to, that's another thing, and an idea is like that as well. Like you don't, if you give me $1 and I give you $1, we both still have $1. But if I give you an idea and you give me an idea, now we both have 2 ideas.
Right.
Love is like that, but it's like a times 10.
But 1 and 1 make 3. So this is when you and I come together, something more is created out of our union.
Yeah.
So when love is exchanged, then this is the whole expansion. That's why they say that creation is infinite and eternal. People say, well, how can you measure infinity? What do you mean infinity? There has to be an end somewhere. What if infinity is simply the space that's created every time something new needs to be born? It's not a finite resource. When we think of life as a finite resource, we can't fathom what infinity is or
Sure.
eternity is.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make sense.
That's true.
So let's get back to DK's words. So, and all forms of divine manifestation. Then we said love in the personality is love in the three worlds. Love in the ego is love in the solar system and all that it contains. Whilst love in the monad demonstrates a measure of cosmic love and embraces much that is outside the solar system altogether. Now, this is sort of out there.
Yeah.
Truly out there.
But that's the good stuff.
But the monad is, it's our deepest identity. It's that fiery atom. And it's said that all the human monads, and it's not all of them are incarnation. We got, 8 billion on the planet at the moment. It's said that there are 60 billion monads in sort of circulation, not all in the dense fields.
Right.
And together, they make a sacred center in the body of the planetary logos.
Yeah.
And that is the third eye. So when we come together in love and harmony and union as a humanity, then the eye becomes single and the body of the planet becomes full of light, if we're going to borrow from that biblical expression. So the light of love is revealed when humanity comes together. That's why we're not the sort of the top of the pyramid, but we're an important part because we're the connective tissue. Without this connective tissue, the puzzle isn't complete.
Yeah. Yeah, we're almost like a container in this plane.
Well, we're a connector.
Yeah.
We're the connective tissue.
Yeah.
So love is the connective tissue that allows a greater love. And I often talk about opening myself up to the presence of a greater love. Then I don't have to name it as a person or a thing, but the presence of a greater love, because I believe that each of us and this planet and all life is held within this nested reality, lives within lives within lives, universes within universes within universes. And so each of us is held in love by a greater presence. That presence, in its turn, is held in love by an even greater expression of love. Now, inside ourselves, we hold all the atoms of our body in love. That's why about caring for yourself is so important, because we bring love into the very heart of who we are, very atoms of our being. That's where health comes from. True health. Oh, man. God. Why didn't I know this earlier?
Right. Well, if only there was a book we could have read.
Yeah, God. So love was the impelling motive for manifestation. And love it is that keeps all in ordered sequence. Love bears all on the path of return to the Creator's bosom. And love eventually perfects all that is. That's from Treatise on Cosmic Fire. That's a powerful sentence. That gives you the formula. That gives you the whole secret of the whole thing. So let me read that again. Love was the impelling motive for manifestation. And love it is that keeps all in ordered sequence. Love bears all on the path of return to the Creator's bosom. And love eventually perfects all that is. So when the Beatles says love is all there is,
they weren't kidding.
They weren't kidding.
Yeah. That's a beautiful passage.
Yeah.
It's almost it's on the more poetic end for DK.
It is, because once you describe what love is and get closer to a true resonant description of it, you can feel it. And love, when you feel it and experience it, is beauty. It is a form of beauty because everything's in harmony.
Yeah.
And then he carries on in the same book, Treatise on Cosmic Fire. As evolution proceeds, it shows itself as a gradual expansion of the love faculty, passing through the stages of love of mate, love of family, love of surrounding associates, to love of one's entire environment. Patriotism gives place later to love of humanity. Often, humanity, as exemplified in the enlightened beings, the sort of, whether you call them ascended masters, postgraduate humans, the people who embody love. And that's the fifth realm, the masters. It's not that they're somehow higher than us and going to rule over us with a rod of iron. No, they hold us in love because they are an embodiments of love and wisdom.
Right.
So that's the unfolding. They feel like that's the revelation that we call evolution.
Yeah, the passage in particular is really meaningful for me because it just spells out so clearly, and you can see it I can see it in my own experience, my own path, but just how you just think of like the love of a child, and they get out like a puppy, and they're seeing for the first time something that's not their family, it's not them, but they have this overwhelming love for this other thing, and you see, and then it starts to grow from there. You can, and hopefully you eventually see. I love that that term too. Like patriotism gives place later to the love of humanity. And like you see that. Oh, okay. We're still like transcending, trying to leave the tribe. We're a tribe of maybe 150 people, and seeing that the other tribe, in the past may have been an enemy for resources. But the abundance of love is the unending resource that we're all trying to embody.
Exactly. So let's sprinkle it with one more Rumi quote. Maybe
Okay.
that's what we should do every now and again, sprinkle a Rumi quote in.
That's probably a good life approach.
Oh, maybe we should put a timer on every hour. Then we become...
you become mechanistic,
exactly.
Which Rumi wouldn't be a fond of.
So here's another Rumi quote. "Oh, my friend, all that you see of me is a shell. The rest belongs to love." Oh, my friend, all that you see of me is a shell. The rest belongs to love. I mean, he realizes he's an expression of love. He isn't who he is. He is love expressed, called Rumi. But it's not Rumi trying to find love. It's love has found Rumi. That's my interpretation anyway.
Yeah.
So moving right along, let's have a look at this, because some of these, we're not going to go through everything. But you see, the energy of love is primarily concentrated in it says the new group of world servers. It means all the people who have said yes to serving life, who've basically woken up and say, this is more than just about me and taking care of me. I want to be of use in the world. So love is primarily concentrated in any group or any person that says, I want to be of service. Mm-hmm. This group finds its representatives in all groups of idealists and servers, and in every body of people who express human thought, particularly in the realm of human betterment and uplift. Through them, the potency of love wisdom can express itself. So love wisdom is the second ray, if you go back to the rays. And it's said that our solar system is a second ray solar system.
Mm. Yeah.
So our solar system itself is here to demonstrate, to reveal, to embody, to manifest love wisdom. That's its contribution to the whole. Now, there are other systems that are going to reveal other aspects of the one. But when you say that it is a loving solar system, it's true, because that's the keynote, according to the Ageless Wisdom teaching, of what it's about. Which is why love really then is the bridge between me and everything, as Rumi said.
Absolutely.
Let's go down to another description. Love for many people, for the majority indeed, is not really love, but a mixture of the desire to love and the desire to be loved, plus a willingness to do anything to show and evoke this sentiment, and consequently to be more comfortable in one's own interior life. This is not good or bad, Joey. This is simply that everyone needs to be seen, heard, and loved, recognized, acknowledged, so that the gift that we have to bring to the world can be brought. If I'm not seen, heard, and loved, I go into my shell. And I can't bring the gift. As we said before, each one of us is a flower in the garden of Gaia. And if I don't show up, the garden isn't complete.
Yeah. And this has one of my favorite passages in all of all of DK. And because it's not specifically just towards love, I think. And this last line, that consequently to be more comfortable in one's own interior life. I mean, that's such a human motivation for anything, and I find that if you're on the path, there is great consternation and there's great discomfort that you're going to have to deal with. And so it's like, there's a constant, like, kind of getting back up off the mat, I think.
Well, and also it means that unconditional love eventually has to prevail, which means I can't have favorites. I can't have enemies. Now, I may oppose retrogressive forces, so-called quote-unquote evil, those that are seeking to squash and stymie the ability of the human spirit to express love.
Yeah.
Or share love with each other, to keep it in the dark and the cold and the unloving space of cruelty.
But as you've said many times on this podcast, support the person, not the pattern.
Exactly.
So it's like, it's really kind of recognizing that there are these patterns and energies that play out in the same kind of way that, you can have two musicians play notes that are in resonance, and you can also have them play notes that are in dissonance.
Yeah.
It's like understanding the difference between the musician and the music.
Yes. So here, if we're going to carry on with the same paragraph, it is this pseudo-love based primarily on a theory of love and service which characterizes so many human relationships, such as those existing, for instance, between husband and wife, parents and their children. Glamored by their sentiment for them and knowing little of the love of the soul, which is free itself and leaves others free also, they wander in a dense fog, often dragging with them the ones they desire to serve, in order to draw forth a responsive affection. Study the word affection, my brother. It comes from the word affect, affection, and see its true meaning. Affection is not love. It is that desire which we express through an exertion of the astral body, and this activity affects our context. It is not spontaneous desirelessness of the soul, which asks nothing for the separated self. This glamour of sentiment imprisons and bewilders all the nice people in the world. And he uses the phrase, all the nice people in the world, imposing upon them obligations which do not exist, and producing a glamour which must eventually be dissipated by the pouring in of true and selfless love. This is a huge one, Joey.
Yeah.
I don't know.
This is a particularly kind of amazing passage because it's very clear,
But it's not being critical.
No, it's just laying out exposing or revealing a very human pattern, that I think we can all identify with if we're honest with ourselves.
Well, maybe we'll close out the TK's contribution to this podcast. Thank you. It basically says, let love be the keynote in all relationships, for the power which must salvage the world, save the world, is the precipitation of love. And you only precipitate something, or something only precipitates when it's supersaturated in you.
Right, when yeah, exactly.
I mean,
that is such a good analogy.
Solution. When
That's
love,
right.
You're filled with love and it's supersaturated, it will precipitate as a crystal of love or as an expression of love.
Yeah, that's a lovely and beautiful and scientific idea.
And then he goes on to close it out. Love is not a sentiment or an emotion, nor is it desire or a selfish motive for right action in daily life. Love is the wielding of the force which guides the worlds and which leads to the integration, unity, and inclusiveness which impels deity itself to action. Love is a hard thing to cultivate. Such is the inherent selfishness of human nature. It is a difficult thing to apply to all conditions of life, and its expression will demand of you the utmost you have to give and the stamping out of your selfish personal activities. So it's not like, being hard on a child, the child of ourselves. Is just basically saying, look, in the end, you got to let go and just let love be in charge of your life.
Well, what I like about this passage, though, is that it acknowledges that the human. I mean, if you look at the human role, if you're adopting it in a game or a movie or whatever, so you incorporate as a human, and therefore you have to exist as a human, and therefore it is is a very difficult task, because you're inherently doing something that maybe you're even programmed through experience to maybe doubt. It's just like so that when you do transcend it, it's so much more glorious than if it was just given to you easily.
Well, yeah, because you don't just earn the right, but you open the portal for it to enter into you, which is why we're talking about the heart. The heart is the portal to the cosmos.
Yeah, well, it's humans were given amazing intuition, but the supremacy of love is almost counterintuitive. So you've been given this great gift of intuition and logic and this incredible razor in which to divine the world, and yet love is counterintuitive to all of that.
I'd like to. We sprinkled a little bit of Rumi. I'd like to sprinkle a few fiery seeds of Agni Yoga.
Okay, yeah, we always love
because that. Because Agni Yoga has these fiery seeds. Mm-hmm. And once again, listen with the ears of the heart. It says, this is from the book called Heart. Let us accept love as the impetus for the expansion of consciousness. The heart will not be aflame without love. It will not be invincible, nor will it be self-sacrificing. Thus, let us give our gratitude to each receptacle of love. It lies on the boundary of the new world, where hate and intolerance are banished. The path of love is the tension of cosmic energy. Thus will people find their place in cosmos. Not like dry leaves, but as flaming lotuses, they will be akin to the highest world. It's a different kind of language, but it's basically saying, look, in the end, you're going to be consumed by this fire of love. And the next quote reinforces that. No one should approach fire with fear. No one should approach it with hatred, because fire is love.
Yeah. I mean, again, that's a little counterintuitive, but it makes sense when you approach it super saturated with love. You can't be burned.
Well, and so let's sprinkle a few more of these fiery seeds because they actually evoke images, just as you presented that image to begin with. So this is taken from Fiery World, Book 1. The decline of the earthly garden is dangerous. No one thinks about the importance of the health of the planet. One thought about it, a single thought, would in itself produce a spatial impulse. One can grow to love the origin of origins and all the creations of the grandeur of thought. Only the heart, covered with nothing but life, links us with the higher forces. The fabric of love is the most sacred one. Without love, there is no creation. And then carrying on with this garden analogy, the embryo of enthusiasm grows into a beautiful inspiration. A drop of goodness is transformed into effective good. A grain of love grows into a beautiful garden. Who then would censure a desire to help a neighbor? Which means like you've got to be free to give and to love.
Mm.
And then the last one I like to use from Agni Yoga is this. I find it beautiful. The music of the spheres and the hymns of nature are more easily heard by those whose hearts are full of love. Those who insist upon formulas for the heart, for love, for compassion, will not open their ears to higher harmonies. So we said before, the heart is in resonance with the cosmos already. It's already pre-tuned because it's said in the Agni Yoga teachings that the heart is a universal organ, and we're given, if you like, the microcosmic version at the center of our being.
Mm.
But the heart itself is the universal connector.
Mhm. I like that idea as love is healing. And, if you call, going back to that, our episode on kindness and criticism,
Yeah,
love can counter the poison of negativity.
absolutely. Exactly.
Yeah,
Nothing else will. Hatred will just increase the inflammation.
yeah, absolutely. It's also, I always think of like too, is like, love is so powerful. It is literally like that match you strike in the dark. It instantly, it changes the entire situation. Doesn't matter how dark it is, one little match.
And I've always appreciated the philosophers of the world, and Pierre Teilhard de Chardin is one. He was he was a scientist. He was a mystic, and there were many of his quotes, but one in particular stayed with me many years ago, and I still reflect on it. This is what he wrote. Someday, after mastering the winds, the waves, the tides, and gravity, we shall harness for God the energies of love. And then, for a second time in the history of the world, humanity will have discovered fire.
Yeah, it's that powerful.
It is
Yeah.
incredible because that's the discovery.
Mhm. Yeah. That's the sort of, I think that's the evolution that, people look backwards for the missing link. That's the forward missing link,
It
that's the
absolutely
next evolutionary
Yeah.
jump, because you really do, when you make that jump, it's, the world is completely different.
And I know in my own way, I've been trying to sort of capture this, what Teilhard was saying. And I just want to read a couple of paragraphs from, there are two essays, one that we published in January, another one we published in April from the Mount. And this is my attempt at trying to capture this feeling. And I'm talking about there are a lot of people doing good things in the world. There's a pioneering movement to heal the planet and all of this. And I said, there is, however, an element often overlooked by this pioneering movement because it is invisible to the naked eye, but thankfully not to the caring heart. We're talking again of love. Love is the most powerful sustaining force in the universe. And according to the ageless wisdom teaching, is the pre-existing and prime motivating force behind all creation. Love burns at the fiery heart of the coming civilization, and without love, a truly sustainable future is not possible. If we are to believe the scriptures that in the beginning was the Word, then this originating, and then quote unquote, intentional formative sound constitutes the sustaining note of all that exists. It holds the Creator's original and limitless loving intent that guarantees the continuity of life and provides cohesion and coherence among and between all elements of creation. If love were to stop her singing, the world would surely cease to exist. And that was how I felt it, not just mentally, but that was my way of registering all the things that Rumi is saying and Teilhard de Chardin. How about a Rumi quote? And then
Yeah.
I think I'd like to just take maybe a time of reflection,
Mhm.
maybe a short guided meditation or something like that, just
Okay.
to digest. We need some digestive enzymes for
That's
this
right.
one.
It's important to take some moments to reflect on it and to let it sit and really seat itself in your heart. Um, do you have a particular Rumi passage you wanted to
Well, yeah,
use?
there's just, once again, it's a one sentence. It says, step out of the circle of time and into the circle of love.
Yeah. I love that one.
And what I love is, and I've used this before, you can measure the speed of light,
Mm.
but the speed of love is instantaneous.
Yeah.
When I am thinking loving and sending love to something, there's no distance and there's no time because everything is love. I am at one with everything in that moment. I've transcended time and space.
Mm.
Love transcends time and space.
Yeah. I mean,
It's the collapsed
yeah.
universe, if you like.
There's a Rumi passage that I particularly love. It's always been one of my favorites. And it says, out beyond the ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field, and I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in the grass, the world is too full to talk about. I just love that. There's a field, and I'll meet you there.
Well, you can feel it.
Yeah.
It's lying down this field. It's immersing yourself in love. And just the main thing is, in order to know something, it has to live inside you.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what we're really doing, is we're evoking the qualities of love so that love can take root in us.
Well, what I also love about that passage is it kind of calls back to what I was saying before about how, when DK in that last passage that we talked about talks about how, being a human and you have these tendencies. Well, when we think about meeting someone in a field from a historical human context, it's usually for battle. And here he's saying, I'll meet you in a field for a completely different reason. We're going to, beyond the ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field and I'll meet you there. I mean, that's transcending the human condition.
I was going to save this to later, but I think I'm going to match you and raise you. but here's a Rumi quote that really would follow on from what you just said.
Yeah.
It's a little longer than the one you just said. Let us fall in love again and scatter gold dust all over the world. Let us become a new spring and feel the breezes drift in the heavens sent. Let us dress the earth in green. And like the sap of a young tree, let the grace from within sustain us. Let us carve gems out of our stony hearts and let them light our path of love. The glance of love is crystal clear, and we are blessed by its light.
Oh, Rumi. Yeah, carving gems out of our
stony heart. Realized Rumi, I mean, when he was writing all of this, it wasn't, popular.
Yeah, absolutely not, especially from, in his neck of the woods. They were a very strict kind of society and kind of, and just, there wasn't, I mean, this is before even the evolution of empathy, really. I mean, he was way ahead of his time.
Well, you always have these forerunners that come ahead and put a marker down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then later on you realize, he planted a seed that maybe took 1,000 years to germinate.
Yeah, easily 1,000 years.
But unless you plant the seed, nothing's going to grow.
That's right.
So you've got these seed bearers who won't see the results or the flowering of their work. Yeah. But that's what a server does. It's non-attachment to outcomes.
I love that because it goes back to the, planting a tree that you'll never be in the shade of. It's such a powerful concept. And when you really start to live it, I mean, that is the embodiment of love, I think, for the human ideas. It's easy to think, okay, I'm going to do this for my kids and my grandkids. But this idea of thinking of doing for all of humanity, for all of our solar and cosmic family.
And it isn't though I have this measure of love and I'm going to apportion it, I'm going to give so much love to this person, so much love. When you realize that you are a portal of limitless love, your heart expands and you just allow it to flow through. It's a very different experience. There are a number of times in the last year that I felt glimmerings of what's ahead. When you hold things truly in your heart.
Yeah.
But you don't hold them as yours.
Right. Yeah, you're holding it with an open hand, not a closed fist. So, it's the sand analogy,
Well, you're holding it with life.
Yeah.
You're holding it as life. So we talked about, I used before the the notion of lives within lives within lives and universes within universes, because for me, it's spheres within spheres within spheres. So this sort of holarchic image for me sums up, because it's a whole expanding into a greater whole, expanding into a greater whole ad infinitum.
Mm.
So what I'd like to do is maybe just take a pause and do a very brief guided meditation, which is really an invitation to allow something to be born inside you. It isn't like follow my words and I'm going to take you somewhere. I'm not the Pied Piper of Hamelin.
I like that one.
I hope not.
Yeah.
So unless, I mean, I'm inviting all of us except you driving down the freeway at the moment. Please don't close your eyes. But go back and do it later if you wish. So why don't we just take a moment to cease all outer activity and bring ourselves to a place of inner stillness. Taking a few deep, gentle breaths to bring ourselves present here and now. And inside this living silence, we enter the sacred space of the heart and feel it pulsing. And we realize that our heart is the hearth of the fire of love that burns as an eternal flame at the core of our being. So stand in this flame, stand in this fire of love. And stand as the fire of love. From this deeply centered place, sense and see lines of lighted love flowing and connecting your heart with the hearts of all your friends, family, co-workers. See this weaving together a matrix of deep connection and communion. These lines of lighted love connect all human hearts of the one humanity. So begin to sense through the heart the pulsing of the one heart of humanity, sensing how it beats in rhythm with the heart of the planetary life. And as your heart beats and pulses together with others, feel our earth as a sentient being pulsing as one coherent field to the heartbeat of the solar system. Imagine ourselves as a heart inside an infinite chain of hearts, extending into the endless nature of the Creator. Lives within lives, within lives, within lives. Hearts within hearts, within hearts. And realize and sense deep in your blood and bones and your DNA that there is only one heart, and that you and I are heart fractals of the generative mystery we call the Creator. Now bring this expanded awareness back to a point of focus. Carry this inner knowing back into this waking moment and allow it to shape and guide all that you think, say, feel, and do today so that your life may be a full expression of love. Let's just take a few moments just to bring yourself back into a space where you are in what we would call your normal waking consciousness. Hopefully your normal waking consciousness has expanded somewhat as it continues to expand each day. And then whatever you registered for you, it may not have been an immediate realization, but when we go deep like that and call in these experiences, sometimes they show up a week later or a month later or a year later. I know when I've been planting things in the garden, different seeds have different times of germination. So I just wanted to offer that as just a way of, another way of sensing into what love is. And as we said at the very beginning of the podcast, it's the opening of the heart that allows us to enter the mystery of love and for love to enter us. Love can't enter through any other doorway than the heart.
Yeah. And if it's also one of the few things, it doesn't matter how powerless you might feel in the world or how what your sense of agency is in the world, you have the ability to tap into this incredible, unending stream of love.
I remember a friend of mine saying years back, the time to give is when you've got nothing. Because
Absolutely.
you haven't, you're temporarily cut off from the circulation of life, the circulation of love. So when you give back to life, you reconnect yourself and the flow continues again.
Yeah.
So you've got to prime the pump with a little bit of love. The heart pump.
Yeah.
The heat pump.
Mm-hmm.
The heat pump of love.
That's right. that may be a whole different podcast.
That's a whole different one. And solar panels as SOULAR.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Joey, I'm not sure what else we need to place into the field, because what we've just touched on, we've opened the door and stepped into the experience of what it means to be alive. What it means to be alive really means what it means to be in love. Not in love in the sense of, oh, I'm in love, but we are inside love and love is inside us. And the whole of evolution is the expression of the one life and the one love.
Yeah.
Particularly the solar system, because it is a love wisdom incarnation.
Yeah.
The flowering of this solar system is the full flowering of love and wisdom, which then is a gift to the galaxy.
Yeah.
Man.
Beautiful.
So
Absolutely beautiful.
Anything you'd like to add in closing?
I think I just want to acknowledge that many people who listen to this podcast, myself included, we struggle with overload and these types of things, and especially in the current world climate. But all it takes for me really is to find a way back to love, and for me that's through gratitude. That's my in. And once I start thinking and feeling what it means to be in gratitude, love just re-enters it's like a warm, light that kind of spreads from my heart over myself, and it's really it's my foundation, it's my anchor.
Yeah.
And my anchor, it's a foundation for me.
Thank you, Joey. And I want to honor Rumi. I mean,
Yeah.
what an amazing soul. Here he was, sort of a flower blossoming alone in a desert.
Yeah.
And maybe just finish with a final Rumi quote.
I would love that.
To be born in love is to serve all beings and all creation. Real lovers serve ardently, hopefully, and in an ecstasy of awe. Look for the happiness of the servant of love. All the joys of the world are nothing to it.
All right. Thank you, Michael. That was beautiful.
Thanks, Joey.